She lunged at me, right there, on camera, outside the gates of the lake resort she thought she still owned, but the cameras didn't lie, and neither did the deed in my name. Hi, I'm Lauren. The sister they never invited to the family trip, or the promotion party, the one they left out of photos, plans, and just family group chats. But this time, I didn't ask for a seat. I bought the whole table. And when they finally saw me, I wasn't the black sheep anymore. I was their new CEO. Before we jump into the story, if you don't mind, let me know where you're from by leaving a comment below. That way I can send a special hello your way. Now go ahead, grab yourself a warm cup of water and find a comfy spot. It's time to begin the story. The text from my mother arrived while I was bent over, tying Lila's shoes with one hand and packing Mason's lunch with the other. We need to talk, call me. No emojis, no punctuation, just a neat little landmine dropped into my morning. I called her after drop-off, still parked in the carpool loop, my coffee going cold in the cup holder. Mom's voice was syrupy sweet, her bad news tone. "Sweetheart," she began, "I've been crunching numbers for the lake trip. With prices going up on everything, we just can't make it work this year. Not with all the extras." My breath caught, right there in the silence between her words. I knew what extras meant. My kids. My 10-year-old son who'd been practicing his casting in the backyard for 2 months. My 7-year-old daughter who named the fish she planned to meet in her lake journal. I cleared my throat. I can chip in more. Things are finally looking up with the business. "Oh no," she cut in, gentle but firm. "We couldn't ask that of you. Besides, Julia thought we could all use a break this summer. From the logistics. You know, simpler. Simpler. Like carving out the complicated branches of a family tree." I held the phone tighter. "Okay, thanks for letting me know." The call ended with polite goodbyes. I sat there another full minute, staring at the dashboard. Then I drove home in silence, the air inside my SUV heavy with something I didn't yet know how to name. That evening, after reheating last night's casserole and pretending I wasn't upset, I told the kids. Mason froze with his fork midair. "But I was going to show Grandpa how I cast now." "I know, buddy. I faltered. "It didn't work out this year." Lila frowned. "Can we go by ourselves? Just us and the fish?" "We'll see," I said, forcing a smile. "Next year, okay?" "Promise?" Mason whispered. I nodded. "Next year." After they went to bed, I opened the freezer and stared at the apple pie I'd baked for the potluck that now wouldn't happen. I didn't even like pie, but Mom did, or used to. 3 days later, while scrolling through Facebook at the kitchen counter, I saw the first photo. Diane and Julia, both in sun hats, smiling from the deck of a cruise ship. The caption read, "Family First Cruise Life." My thumb hovered, then scrolled. Another image. Dad teaching Julia's boys shuffleboard, exactly the way he'd taught me. My stomach twisted. Next came the captain's dinner, everyone dressed up. Even cousin Melanie was there, in a sparkly blue dress. I kept scrolling like pressing on a bruise. Each photo a fresh sting. Then came the voicemail. "Hi, sweetie. Just wanted to say we're having such a wonderful time. The ship is gorgeous. Wish you could see it. Maybe next year when things aren't so tight, right?" I didn't reply. I couldn't. I just sat on the porch with a glass of warm white wine, the kind I used to bring to family barbecues, before I learned it would never be the right kind. Inside, Mason's fishing rod leaned in the corner, untouched. Lila had drawn a fish with tears on its cheeks in her lake journal. I don't know when the grief ended and the grit began. I only remember that night I opened my laptop, not to scroll, not to distract, but to open the Navitra investor deck I'd been too nervous to touch for weeks. It was time. Navitra wasn't just an idea anymore. It was the reason I'd pulled myself up after my marriage ended, the reason I'd turned down jobs that paid more but meant less, a child safety wearable that parents wouldn't have to beg their kids to wear, waterproof, discreet, stylish, born out of panic in a crowded mall when I couldn't find Mason for 17 terrifying minutes. I glanced at my inbox. Investor interest had been lukewarm last month, but now, with that hollow ache in my chest giving way to steel, I was ready to try again. I stood and peeked in on the kids. Mason slept with his arms wrapped around the rod like it was a teddy bear. Lila had fallen asleep mid-coloring. Her drawing showed 3 fish now, smiling. "I promise," I whispered, leaning in between them. "We will never be left behind again." Back in the kitchen, my phone buzzed. Willow, investor meeting confirmed, Wednesday 9 a.m. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I replied with just one word: ready. 3 years ago, Mason vanished in a crowded mall, and my world stopped. He'd been right next to me at the bookstore, clutching a graphic novel and talking about dinosaurs, and then gone. Just like that. I remember the way my legs locked up, my voice stuck somewhere between a scream and a prayer. For 17 minutes, I ran through food courts and escalators, calling his name so many times it stopped sounding like a word. When a security guard finally brought him back, crying, apologizing, safe, I dropped to my knees and promised myself no other parent would have to feel that kind of terror, ever again. That's where Navitra began, not in a lab, not in a garage, but in the middle of a panic, on the linoleum floor of the Asheville Galleria, with my son in my arms and a vow in my chest. By the time summer 2021 rolled around, the business was real. Not profitable yet, but pulsing with the kind of potential you only get when you're building from pain. Willow and I worked out of a shared co-working space that smelled like burnt espresso and whiteboard ink. She was the brainy one. Systems, product logistics. I was the heart, the voice, the parent in the room. We'd spend hours after bedtime bouncing design tweaks and market pitch language back and forth over video calls. I got used to eating cold ramen while Lila asked me why all my sketches looked like bracelets. I told her we were making superhero gear. That always made her smile. Still, every time I thought we were close, something fell through. Funding was scarce. Most investors thought Navitra was noble, but niche. They didn't see the market. They didn't see me. Except one group did, or at least they were willing to look. We had a meeting with a firm in Durham, Vanguard Capital, serious people in serious shoes. That morning, I dressed in my best navy blazer and pearl studs, the ones my dad gave me for college graduation back when he still called twice a month. Willow met me at the office. We reviewed our pitch like we always did, fast, focused, like two women who didn't have the luxury of being mediocre. Just before stepping into the boardroom, my phone buzzed. Group text from Diane. "Family dinner at our place tonight. Bring wine if you're coming." There were 8 people on that text thread. I wasn't one of them. I closed the screen and smiled at Willow. "Let's go show them what we've built." The presentation started with slides and stats, missing children, tech gaps, parental behaviors. Then came the story, mine. I'm not a tech founder who saw a market opening. I'm a mom who lost her son for 17 minutes in a crowded space and never forgot the fear. Navitra is for every parent who has lived that nightmare, or dreads it. They listened, really listened. By the time we left, my inbox had a signed term sheet, $5 million in seed funding. $5 million! Willow cried in the elevator. I laughed so hard I startled a banker stepping in on the 3rd floor. That night, we went out for pizza to celebrate. Mason ordered extra cheese. Lila wanted dessert first. I let them both have their way. I took a blurry picture of them to mark the occasion. The lighting was awful. The joy was not. Later, while Mason folded his napkin into airplanes, I checked my phone. A new message from Rachel, my friend and lawyer. It was a forwarded email chain. Blake, my brother-in-law, had been discussing a long-term lake reservation with the Turner Pines property manager. He wanted an exclusive family experience for 8 weeks next summer, just immediate relatives. His exact words. I stared at the screen for a long time, rereading the phrase, immediate family only, until it lost meaning. My stomach twisted. I called Rachel. "You saw it?" she said, skipping the greeting. I saw it, I replied. How much do you know about real estate law? She paused, enough to know that if you're thinking what I think you are, it's not crazy, just expensive. I can do expensive now. The next morning, I drove out to Turner Pines. It was strange pulling up without an invitation. Stranger still that I had every right to be there. Fred met me on the porch of the main lodge. He was older than I remembered, with a tan ball cap and a faded name tag. His handshake was firm. Lauren Chen, right? Your lawyer said you wanted a walkthrough? I nodded, soaking in the scent of pine needles and lake water. That's right. We walked the grounds in silence. The dock where Mason caught his first fish was still weather-worn but sturdy. Cabin 7, the one Julia always claimed first, had a broken screen door and peeling shutters. I made a mental note to fix that first. Would you like to discuss reserving a week? Fred asked as we reached the fire pit. No, I said, turning toward him. I'd like to discuss buying the place. He blinked. The whole thing? Every inch. He let out a low whistle. You're really doing this? I looked past him toward the cabins, the woods, the lake that once meant family and now meant something far more personal. Yes, I said, all of it. Some families have boundaries. Mine had gatekeeping, and for most of my life I waited politely on the other side of the metaphorical fence, hands folded, voice lowered, hoping someone might open the latch and say, "We saved a spot for you." That never happened until now. The papers were ready. Rachel sat across from me in her office, sliding the final deed transfer across her glass desk with the kind of calm that only comes from years of cleanly slicing through family messes. It's done, she said, tapping the signature line. You're now the legal owner of Turner Pines Resort. I picked up the pen. It was heavier than I expected. The ink glided across the paper like a signature I'd practiced in dreams. All of it? I asked. She nodded. Cabin 1 through 9. Dock rights, shoreline, even the fire pit. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it felt absurd. The fire pit where Julia once burned my birthday card claiming it was an accident. That fire pit now belonged to me. That afternoon, I drove back out to Turner Pines. Fred met me by the lodge, his key ring jangling at his hip. Well, boss, he said, tipping his cap, ready for your first walk as owner? We moved slowly through the property. The air smelled like pine needles and sun-warmed cedar. Cabin 7's porch still creaked the same way it had when I was 13 and not allowed past the threshold because Julia needed her space. Fred paused outside it now. Sentimental attachment to this one? I looked at the peeling shutters, the slanted screen door, the place that had always been off-limits to me. No, I said. Strategic. Fred grinned. Knew I liked you. Back home, my kitchen table had become a war room, juice boxes on one end, manila folders on the other. Rachel joined me that night with a bottle of wine and a stack of trespass notices. I've drafted them individually, she said, laying them out. Julia, Blake, Diane, Walter. Cousin Melanie, even though she mostly just tags along. And they'll hold? Absolutely. As the property owner, you have full rights to deny access. And based on the posts I've seen lately, they have no idea what's coming. She showed me a screenshot from Julia's Instagram, a countdown labeled Carter Summer. Matching polos, color-coded cabin assignments, and a caption that read, "Tradition continues, we're legacy, blessed family." Then a text from Diane, sent to our old family group thread, a blurry restaurant selfie. "Wish you were here." I didn't reply. Instead, I handed Rachel the signed documents. Serve them tomorrow night. After dinner. Make it memorable. The next evening, while Julia and the others sipped overpriced wine at a French bistro downtown, our process server approached their table with envelopes in hand. I imagined the looks on their faces, Julia's lips tightening, Diane's confused tilt of the head, Blake scanning for a legal exit. My phone started buzzing within minutes. Calls, texts, even a voice message from my father. "Lauren, what is this? Is this some kind of mistake?" I silenced the screen and walked quietly to Lila's room. She was asleep, her lake journal open beside her, little blue fish drawn with glitter pens and misspelled names, Sparklefin, Leafy, Grump. I tucked the journal under her hand and kissed her forehead. Mason stirred across the hall, mumbling something about marshmallows. I smiled. The next morning, Fred called. "Just so you know," he said, "Julia and Blake showed up here. They were trying the gate code. Didn't get in, but Blake was definitely testing the lock." I nodded, already at my laptop. "Did the cameras catch it?" "Sure did. Want me to send you the files?" "Please." I emailed Rachel the footage. Subject line, "Options." She replied 3 minutes later. "Harassment, attempted trespass. If they keep this up, we escalate." Then came the envelope, hand-delivered to my doorstep by a courier in khakis and mirrored sunglasses. Inside, a formal letter from Blake's law firm accusing me of emotional interference, loss of familial access, and reputational harm. I read it twice, then laughed. It wasn't even the legalese. It was the audacity. That evening, I grilled burgers while the kids chased fireflies. I was flipping Masons when Willow texted me a screenshot. "Julia's going live on Channel 7, local segment, wants to clear the air." I didn't even blink. Let them film. We'd make it worth watching. They always said the lake was ours. A family tradition, a sacred summer spot. But the fine print said otherwise. Because ours never included me. And now it did. Fred was the first to spot them. Julia in her pastel linen dress, a full makeup face under the July sun, standing just outside the Turner Pines gate, a microphone clipped to her collar. Behind her, a local news van idled with its satellite dish raised, and a reporter shaded her notes with one hand. Diane and Walter stood behind Julia like furniture, present but expressionless. Fred leaned into the walkie at his hip. "She's here, with cameras. You want me to say something?" I glanced out the lodge window where I'd been organizing camp supply bins with Willow. Lila's tie-dye shirts, the snack crates, the labeled life vests. Just behind them, a line of kids was chasing soap bubbles across the dock. "No," I told Fred. "Let her roll." It didn't take long for Julia's voice to pierce the quiet. She gestured to the lodge with her trademark mix of condescension and charm. "This is what betrayal looks like," she told the camera. "My sister bought our family's summer home just to exclude us. She's weaponized nostalgia." I took my time walking up to the gate. The air buzzed with cicadas, hot asphalt, and the scent of grilled corn from one of the picnic pits. As I reached the cameras, Julia's voice faltered. The reporter turned toward me, eyes lighting up. "Are you Lauren Chen?" she asked. "Would you like to respond?" "Yes," I said, offering a calm smile. "Actually, I'd love to clarify a few things." Julia opened her mouth, but I lifted a hand gently. Turner Pines is now home to Camp Navitra, a nonprofit summer program for children of single-parent households. It launches next week. The reporter blinked. "A camp?" "Yes, sponsored in part by our child safety tech firm, with funding from private investors. We provide enrichment activities, confidence building, and respite for families often left behind." I handed her a flyer. "You'll find our mission, our partners, and our plans to expand by next year." Behind me, a group of kids ran by with popsicles in hand, their laughter floating through the pines. Fred gave me a subtle thumbs up from his post near the lodge. Diane shifted uncomfortably. Walter looked like he wanted to disappear into the gravel. Julia's jaw clenched. "You bought this place just to punish us." I turned to the camera. "I bought it to protect children, offer joy, and reclaim something I was told didn't belong to me. If others feel punished, perhaps they should examine why." She lunged. It wasn't graceful, just a quick, angry swipe at my phone as I pulled up our website. The microphone snagged on her collar, and the cameraman flinched. Diane gasped. I stepped back. Fred was there in seconds. "Back away, ma'am," the reporter kept filming. Julia adjusted her dress, eyes wide, face burning. "You're turning the public against us." "No," I said quietly. "You're doing that all by yourself." She stormed off. Diane followed, muttering apologies. Walter paused for a beat, then trudged after them, shoulders sagging. I walked back toward the lodge as Fred chuckled softly. "She's gonna regret that move." I exhaled deeply, then reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. One missed call from Rachel. I tapped to return it. "Did you see it?" she said immediately. I was the main act. "They just aired the footage. Julia grabbing you, the whole town's talking. Public sentiment is shifting fast. You're not the villain anymore." I stood at the water's edge, the dock planks warm under my feet. Mason waved at me from the canoe, life vest strapped snugly, paddle in hand. Lila sat near the bow with a juice pouch and a bandana. Her laughter cut through the lake air like a hymn. "This," I told Rachel, "was never about punishment. It's about peace. My kind." "Then you've got it." That evening, after the last canoe was stored and the kids tucked into their bunk beds with campfire songs still echoing in their dreams, I stepped outside onto the cabin porch. The sky was streaked with pink and orange. A soft breeze lifted the edge of the welcome banner we'd hung at the gate. My phone vibrated, a voicemail from Diane. I listened, hand steady on the railing. "Lauren, it's me, your father. He hasn't slept since yesterday. I can't believe it's come to this. Are you proud of yourself? You've torn the family apart just to make a point." I didn't reply. Instead, I lit a citronella candle, placed it on the edge of the porch, and opened my laptop. The first camp registration email had arrived. A single mother from Raleigh. Her son loved astronomy. She wanted him to learn how to swim. She wrote, "We've never had a vacation before. Thank you for making this possible." I smiled and typed back, "Welcome to the lake." You know what's louder than family silence? Laughter echoing from cabins they thought I'd never enter. Turner Pines had never looked like this. Bright towels flapped on porch railings, flip-flops littered the dock, and a dozen little voices hollered across the water, each one demanding attention from the sun. Cabin 7, once Julia's off-limits territory, now housed popsicle stick sculptures and a fish mural painted by a 9-year-old named Tasha, who wore sparkles like armor. A sign out front read "Creative Cove," complete with glitter glue thumbprints. Willow ran programming like a camp counselor born to do the job, whistle around her neck, clipboard in hand, and an endless supply of fruit snacks in her fanny pack. Mason, now taller than last summer, helped lead the fishing lessons at the dock, proudly showing younger kids how to bait hooks and release gently. Lila had taken ownership of the mural wall, sketching new lake fish each morning. Some wore sunglasses, others held juice boxes. "Mom," she said one afternoon, dragging me by the hand, "this one's called Lady Sparklegill. She runs the lake." "That's a great name," I said, smiling. "I think she already does." Fred moved through the grounds like a gentle ghost in a camp tea, handing out marshmallows and telling jokes from the 70s that made the kids giggle anyway. "What do you call a fish with no eyes?" he'd ask. "Fish." Behind the joy, something deeper hummed, something heavy but quieter than it used to be. Camp was a success. The first families were settling in, but the town had started talking. A local paper ran a short feature. From family retreat to healing retreat. Comments online were split. Some praised the mission, others hinted at the drama. One tabloid went further. Headline, "From Golden Daughter to Public Meltdown." Julia's Instagram had gone dark. Rachel stopped by on a humid Tuesday with a coffee in one hand and her tablet in the other. "Forbes Women in Tech," she announced, tapping the screen. "They're profiling you next month. Cover story." I stared at the article mock-up, my photo at the dock, the headline, "The Mother Behind the Movement, Lauren Chen, Rewrites the Rules of Safety Tech." I let the words sit there. "That's real?" I asked. Rachel smiled. "As real as the lake behind you." That night, after the cabins quieted, I found a letter in the lodge mailbox. Diane's handwriting. The envelope smelled faintly of her perfume, rose water and distance. Inside was a single photo. Me, maybe 7 or 8, holding a fish up by the line, grinning awkwardly. I was standing on this very dock, alone. No one in the frame but me. Her note read, "I found this while cleaning. I don't remember who took it. I'm sorry I wasn't there." I stared at the photo long enough for the air around me to shift. The sound of Mason's laughter from across the cabins pulled me back. I folded the note and slipped it into my back pocket. Then I lit a mosquito candle and sat on the porch until the stars started to blink awake. The next morning, Diane texted, "We miss the old you." I replied, "You never knew the real me." That evening, we had our first big campfire night. Fred passed out the marshmallows, Willow led the sing-alongs, and Lila insisted on telling a ghost story that mostly involved glittery fish who haunted bullies. As the fire crackled, I looked around the circle. Parents who'd come here feeling like outsiders were now singing out loud, off-key and happy. Kids who'd never been on a vacation before now held sticky graham crackers like trophies. Cabin 7 glowed in the background, warm and wide open. Rachel nudged me. They'd lose their minds if they saw this. "Let them," I said. I stood up and threw a pine cone into the fire. The sparks danced upward like confetti, and then Fred stepped beside me, his expression unreadable. "Your mother just pulled up," he said. "She's alone." I looked toward the entrance where a silver sedan idled just outside the gate. I didn't move. "Want me to go say something?" he asked. I shook my head. Let her wait. I used to beg for space in their story. A place at the lake, a spot in the family photo, a seat where my name wouldn't feel like an afterthought. But somewhere between silence and s'mores, I stopped asking. I built my own chapter instead. It was early September, the kind of weekend where mornings held onto summer while evenings whispered of fall. Leaves had just started to drop, gold and red confetti along the path to the dock. The final group of campers packed their bags under the stretch of a Carolina sky, and Turner Pines exhaled with a kind of warmth only hard-earned peace can bring. Mason had insisted on one last fishing trip. I watched from the shore as he reeled in a base with a proud whoop that echoed across the lake. He turned, holding it high like a trophy. "Take a picture, Mom, just like last summer, but better." Click. I smiled. Much better. Nearby, Lila sprawled on a blanket, her lake journal open beside her, now filled to the very last page. Her drawings had grown more confident, fewer tears on fish faces, more sparkles in sunglasses. "Want to see my favorite?" she asked. I knelt beside her. Always. She flipped to the last page, a sketch of a big blue fish, smiling wide, surrounded by smaller ones. Above them, she'd written, "Lady Sparklegill's family." That afternoon, Willow and Rachel joined me by the main cabin. Willow was already charting out next year's program calendar. Rachel, with a legal pad and coffee in hand, was brainstorming donor tiers for a new scholarship fund. "We should name it after you," she said, not looking up. "No," I said. "Name it for the girls who feel invisible. They'll know who it's for." The air shifted when Fred radioed in. "She's here again. Your mom, at the gate, alone." I walked down the gravel path slowly, heart steady. Diane stood just outside, cardigan draped over her shoulders like armor. No cameras, no entourage, just her. "I'm sorry," she said, "for all of it. The things I said, the things I didn't say." I nodded. "Thank you." She waited, eyes searching mine. "Can I come in?" "No," I said gently. "But you can go in peace." She blinked, then nodded, and turned back to her car. That night, after the last marshmallow was toasted and the final bedtime story read, I sat at the fire pit with the remaining families. Mason nestled under one arm, Lila on the other. "Tell a story," one of the kids asked. I looked into the flames. Once there was a little girl who stood alone in every family photo, but she grew up, and she built a place where no one ever had to stand alone again. A quiet settled over us, not sad, just full. The next morning, while cleaning up the lodge, Rachel brought in the mail. On top of the stack was a brown envelope addressed in pencil to the owner of Turner Pines. Inside was a drawing, crayon on construction paper, a cabin, a fish with a crown, a group of smiling stick figures holding hands. At the bottom, in block letters, it said, "Thank you for making space for kids like me." I held the paper to my chest and closed my eyes. Later that afternoon, Forbes published the story, my photo on the cover, the headline, "From Forgotten to Fearless, One Mother's Journey from Silence to CEO." Julia never responded. Diane didn't return. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to check. As the last group of campers boarded their cars, Mason turned to me. "Can we come back next year?" he asked. I smiled and pulled him close. "Every year," I said, and then some. Sometimes all it takes is one child's drawing, signed simply "Thank you," to remind you that healing doesn't need permission. I didn't rewrite my family's story. I simply stopped asking to be in theirs and began writing my own. We don't always get to choose the families we're born into, but we can choose the kind of love we pass on. When we build safe places for children, for truth, for ourselves, we're not just reclaiming space, we're planting new roots. As the seasons change, so do we. And sometimes that change becomes a gift for others. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear how you found your own kind of peace. Leave a thought, share a memory, or follow along for more stories of resilience and renewal.